Hamas, as a condition of this deal, has to demilitarize and be eradicated from the Gaza Strip by either requesting amnesty, turning in their weapons, or leaving the Gaza Strip. And what gives some real bite to this deal is the fact that President Trump, the head of the strongest country in the entire world, is making guarantees. Now, how exactly he's going to go about doing this, we don't know in Israel. What I can tell you is that 53% of Gaza is controlled by Israel.
The world is wondering what is happening now at Gaza. Is there a ceasefire? Is there a peace plan? Who is patrolling Gaza? What is happening in Gaza? There are many questions and few answers. Let's listen to Piers Morgan as he delves into what is the status right now in Gaza. Let's watch it together and we'll discuss it afterwards. Kindly subscribe to our channel so a little bit of light will push away a lot of darkness.
The big concern that people have is that you've got a bunch of rebels now swarming around Gaza, Hamas trying to control them, succeeding and failing in equal measure, and there's a bit of chaos there. And in the crossfire are IDF, and you're seeing some IDF soldiers being killed, and then Israel is reacting with force and killing a lot of Palestinians. So this ceasefire has not actually been a complete ceasefire already. And the fear is that it won't take a lot to send the Israeli forces back into full action, not least because you have people like Ben-Gvir and Smotrich in the government who are urging them to do exactly that right now. So, I mean, how confident are you that this, as J.D. Vance says, it's not 100% obviously, but are you as optimistic as he is that this ceasefire will lead to a lasting peace?
Good to see you, Pierce. I actually think here I would more side on the side of Donald Trump. Again, we're hearing two voices. I don't know if they're coordinated or not coming out of the White House. They both, to some degree, reflect reality. There is promise that this is moving forward. There has been less fighting. We've seen that Hamas has been slowly handing over the bodies of dead Israelis. It's a miracle that they brought home the 20 hostages. But the reality here is you're dealing with an unpredictable terror organization called Hamas that has a goal to still destroy Israel. And that is why, again, if you look at the first point at this plan, and especially the point we're looking at now, Hamas, as a condition of this deal, has to demilitarize and be eradicated from the Gaza Strip by either requesting amnesty, turning in their weapons, or leaving the Gaza Strip. And what gives some real bite to this deal is the fact that President Trump, the head of the strongest country in the entire world, is making guarantees. Now, how exactly he's going to go about doing this, we don't know in Israel. What I can tell you is that 53% of Gaza is controlled by Israel. We know the enemy. We understand the enemy's tactics. The enemy just killed, as you mentioned, 2 of our soldiers in violation of this treaty. What Dave said, that the killing is going on, of course, the killing, we're not randomly killing anybody. We're trying to kill Hamas terrorists. And when there's an action that Hamas is approaching Israelis, as we know, unfortunately, sometimes civilians are in that area because that's how Hamas works. But you're looking at a deal with Hamas. There's 2 sides to the deal. When Hamas is one of the sides of the deal, there's no guarantee until they're gone, Pierce. Right now, there is
the problem. I mean, I would say the problem. Coming back to you, Dave. I mean, I don't quibble actually with what Doran said there particularly, but I would say the exact same thing applies the other way, right? That there are people in that Israeli cabinet like Ben-Gvir absolutely itching to restart the fighting. In fact, they don't think it should have stopped. You know, he actually said at the weekend, I call on the Prime Minister to order the IDF to renew full-scale fighting in the Strip at full strength. The false belief that Hamas will change its ways or will even abide by the agreement it signed are proving, unsurprisingly, to be dangerous to our security. This Nazi terrorist organization must be destroyed completely, and the sooner the better. And the problem with that is, you know, Donald Trump has put a lot of political capital and been successful getting the hostages out, but he's putting capital on a level of trust with Hamas leadership that they do actually want to bring this to an end. But at the same time, he's got senior Israelis in the government there who want the complete opposite. So, you know, there is a lot of distrust on both sides here.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I don't know. I guess at this point in time, years later, I just can't even believe that you can say things like, "Well, look, this is a terrorist group that wants to destroy Israel." I mean, look, the reality we're looking at is that Gaza has been destroyed. And Piers, you're absolutely right to call out people like Smotrich and Ben Gvir and other far right members of the government. But look, just the Israeli government in general. Look, I thought this was like a perfect example that kind of sums up the whole conflict and what people like me and you have been talking about for quite a while, Piers. So last week, when Israel, after the ceasefire first goes into effect, when Israel accuses Hamas of slow rolling, getting back the remains of dead hostages. All the living hostages have been gotten at this point, but the remains of dead hostages, they say they're slow rolling it. So they immediately say we're going to have the aid that's coming into Gaza. Just after this latest blow up 24 hours ago, Israel announced they're going to suspend aid and distribution. That is the way in which Israel conducts this war. Don't give me any of this BS about there just happen to be some innocent people there. You literally punish the civilian population by denying them aid for the crimes of what Hamas has done, which, by the way, have not even been demonstrated. It's just Israel says Hamas was slow rolling this, or they claim that Hamas violated the ceasefire when there's reporting that contradicts that, but who knows? It's in the cloud of war right now. It's hard to know for sure. But either way, the fact that you just punish the civilian population, Israel has destroyed all of Gaza. Jared Kushner, the Jewish family friend of Benjamin Netanyahu, pro-Israel, representing the most pro-Israel administration in the history of the United States of America. Even he said it looked like a nuclear bomb had gone off. People are sleeping in tents. So, Pierce, me and you, we've been hearing now for 2 years that, essentially Hamas uses these people as human shields. Hamas, they're essentially fair game, and it's on Hamas if they get killed. Israel really doesn't want to, but they're human shields, nothing else we could do. But then you look up and the entire thing is destroyed, and they're denying aid as a weapon of war, a clear example of collective punishment. Now, I'm sure my opponent here would disagree with it being characterized as a genocide, but what do you call that, Piers? You've decided an entire people are just fair game because they're human shields with no onus on you to demonstrate that there were Hamas weapons in every single one of these buildings that we destroyed or anything like that. And you can also just deny aid to a people who have just been decimated for 2 years as a punishment for what their government's done. And then you still have the nerve to call them terrorists and say they want the destruction of Israel. It's just too much for any reasonable person.
I mean, yeah, look, I would say that in relation to Hamas, if you're an Israeli and you remember what happened on October the 7th because you lost people who died that day or were kidnapped or whatever it may be, the scale of what happened that day was on a different level to anything we've seen in a single day in the entire 75-year conflict between Israel and Palestine. And it displayed to me not just a terrorist view of indiscriminately killing anyone they could get their hands on, but a kind of nihilistic view, right? So I can understand actually why Israelis have a deep distrust of anyone related to running Hamas. I get that.
Yeah, no,
but I also think it's intellectually honest to say the scale of Israel's response has been massively disproportionate. The two things can be equally true.
I think that's right. And of course, who would think any Israeli would trust Hamas? But the other thing here, I was just reading earlier today, Haaretz had a piece about how essentially the Israeli government is very frustrated because there is no counter to Hamas that's rising, and there aren't as many protests as they think. There aren't as many rival gangs, and Hamas still has control of all this area. But Pierce, just think about what the implication of that is. How many times have me and you been told over the last 2 years, by your guest right here in particular, that it is intolerable for Hamas to still be in power, and therefore we have to do whatever we can. And yet they've done all of this, killed tens of thousands of innocent people, destroyed the entire Gaza Strip, and Hamas is still in power. So even by their own logic, you failed on what the goal of this war was. And by the way, Pierce, as you know, I've been sitting here, I'm sorry, it's a little frustrating. I've been sitting here for 2 years telling people, you're not going to destroy Hamas this way. And every one of them said, what do you know, comedian? You're not an expert. And yet here we are at the end of the 2 years, then all the people, I'm not the only one, we're all totally vindicated. Hamas is
Yeah,
still there.
I mean,
He
I
didn't even
think-
achieve the goal.
Yeah, I mean, Doran Spielman, we were told, look, once the hostages are all released, this is over. That clearly, at the moment, is hanging in the balance. I mean, I think it's obvious it wouldn't take a lot for this to flare up again. But what is indisputable, as Dave says, there's no sign that Hamas has lost all its power. I mean, they're operating with power in Gaza right now. They're still heavily armed. They have said publicly, we are not going to disarm. So, it seems to me that the original aim of releasing the hostages is one thing, but this idea that Israel has defeated Hamas is clearly not true. So where does that leave this ceasefire other than in a very precarious place? If Hamas just say, we are not disarming, what does Israel do?
First of all, Pierce, I want to speak to some of the things that Dave just said. When it comes to the fog of war, Dave, I hear that you're saying anytime it's Hamas directly targeting Israeli soldiers, directly targeting civilians, it's the fog of war. You're saying that's the fog of war. But when it comes to Israel targeting Hamas, you still refuse to accept the basic principle. There was no Wannsee conference here. Israel's not committing genocide. There's no ethnic cleansing because they're Gazans. We have one goal, Dave, one simple goal: to destroy Hamas and bring home our hostages. And all of a sudden, it's not the fog of war, Dave. It is your fog. You're unwilling to understand the most basic principle here, that there's probably never been a more moral war fought by an army that does not want to go to war. What's the proof? It's exactly what you're saying. As soon as we got the hostages home, as soon as President Trump put a deal on the table, it's not a perfect deal. What was the very first thing we did? We withdrew exactly to the yellow border. We exactly gave time for Hamas to return the 20 living hostages
You're
and the 29 bodies. One second, Dave. One second. I let you speak.
Over dead
one second, Dave. I did
remains.
let you speak.
Most
I did let
moral
you speak.
army.
Just give me
sorry. Go ahead.
One
Sure.
second, if you don't mind. We waited. They just killed two of our soldiers. There was no fog of war. These two boys were sitting outside a tank, walking around. They were shot by an RPG and killed in cold blood. When I listen to you, it doesn't sound like we're dealing with Hamas. It sounds like we're dealing with a bunch of kindergarten children that are out to play in the playground. This is an organization who crossed the border, and you say that you condemn October 7th, but both you and Pierce, if I may say so, you constantly say you condemn October 7th, but you also condemn every moment from then that we've tried to defend ourselves to go after Hamas.
No, that's not true. Hang on. Doran, you can't say that about me. I'm sorry. For many, many, many months, after this started, I repeatedly was attacked actually by pro-Palestinians because they felt that I was giving too much license for Israel to exercise its right to defend itself, which I felt was a duty, a moral duty to its people, because Hamas had said we're going to keep trying to do this. And they had an absolute right to defend themselves.
Do we not have a moral duty now, Pierce?
My criticism of the Israeli government and its strategy really became a lot more critical this year, at the start of this year, when I began to see that it was not achieving its goals. It wasn't getting Hamas destroyed. It wasn't actually getting the hostages released. It was leading to what I think are going to end up being categorized as war crimes, like the 3-month blockade. It was leveling Gaza to complete obliteration. And I felt this was, A, completely disproportionate, but B, and probably even more significantly, it wasn't achieving the initial war goals. And coupled with that, we have people like Smotrich and Ben-Gvir openly talking about their desire for ethnic cleansing.
Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, I'm sorry,
I know.
That's a red herring.
Hang on. All the Israeli
Prime
guests,
Minister Netanyahu runs the government.
all the Israeli guests I have on always say you should ignore two senior members of the Israeli government.
It's a democracy.
And I'm sorry.
We made the deal.
I'm sorry. It's a bit like
They're in the
people saying.
government.
It's a bit like people saying in Britain with the British government, just ignore what the Chancellor says. Ignore what the Foreign Secretary says.
They're not the Chancellor. They have no power.
These people are senior members of the government. They have an influence over Netanyahu. No
because
question.
It's a democracy. But if they have an influence, Pierce, then how is it? You're saying both things and they're opposites. If they have influence, we just said that Prime Minister Netanyahu agreed to an imperfect deal presented by President Trump, even though Ben-Gvir and Smotrich and many people in Israel, including myself, including you, as we opened up, I think even including Dave, saying, what does it mean we're not winning? It means that this is not a great deal. We don't see Hamas completely obliterated. I agree with you. I agree with Dave. Hamas is still in Gaza. How did that happen? Because Prime Minister Netanyahu is betting on President Trump. So am I. President Trump just announced that he sees Arab allies that also say they're going to go into Gaza and teach Hamas a lesson if they don't straighten out. What are we to do but rely on the word of the most powerful man in the entire world? And I'm hoping that that man is going to find a way to dismantle and destroy Hamas. It is point number 1 and point number 9 in the deal that we signed. And if he goes and does it, we'll have achieved 2 goals. We got our hostages home. Many of them are dead because Hamas are cruel bastards. Most of them are alive. And if we can continue the goal of wiping Hamas out of Gaza, we can rebuild Gaza. But it's these conversations when, oh, you're killing, you can't kill, you can't fight back. If we listen to these, Pierce, I would have raised the white flag. We would have raised the white flag. 2 years ago, Hamas would be fully in charge of Gaza and all of our hostages would still be there. This has been incredibly successful, but no, it's not perfect. Yeah. The fact that it's not perfect does not mean that we have not achieved an enormous amount and that we cannot win. Victory, it sounds like an ancient word, is in our grasp. It depends on President Trump if he's willing to go the extra mile.
All right, Dave Smith, I want to read what Trump posted on Truth Social. Numerous of our now great allies in the Middle East and areas surrounding the Middle East have explicitly and strongly, with great enthusiasm, informed me that they would welcome the opportunity at my request to go into Gaza with a heavy force and straighten out Hamas if Hamas continues to act badly in violation of their agreement with us. The love and spirit of the Middle East has not been seen like this in 1,000 years. It's a beautiful thing to behold. I told these countries and Israel, not yet. There is still hope that Hamas will do what is right. If they do not, an end to Hamas will be fast, furious, and brutal. I would like to thank all of those countries that called to help. Also, I'd like to thank the great and powerful country of Indonesia and its wonderful leader for all the help they have shown and given to the Middle East, and to USA, to everyone. Thank you for your attention in this matter, President Trump. So he's coming under a lot of pressure, clearly, to potentially commit American forces to engage, it seems from this post, with Israel to finish the job with Hamas. I mean, that would be, to me, a massive and potentially extremely problematic. The big concern
well, Mr. Smith, David Smith, really, your accusations, your baseless statements about your really, that Israel is committing genocide, disproportionate response. Have we not forgotten, what's that word, putting things in context? What happened on October 7? Who started the war? Who brought upon the war? Not Israel. This was Hamas. And have we not forgotten the thousands of Palestinians, Gazans, who joined Hamas when they went through with this terror attack? Have we not forgotten the scenes? How thousands of Gazans were lining the streets of Gaza, cheering on and giving out candies and dancing as they were dragging the hostages through the streets. Have we forgotten that the Gazans were hiding the hostages in plain sight in their homes? Have we forgotten that this is a war? This was a war for Israel's survival. Hamas and Hezbollah and Iran were all coordinating together to make October 7 the end of Israel. Their plan was to hit from the north, from the south, from the east, from the west, and eradicate Israel. Miraculously, Hezbollah was not mobilized yet enough. Iran didn't. Hamas went it on its own. They butchered, they killed, they murdered, they mutilated, they raped, they beheaded, they burnt 1,200 innocent civilians. Mr. Pierce Morgan, you said that you changed your views when you realized the war wasn't reaching its objectives, that you didn't think that there was an end in sight. Let me share with you a thought, perhaps. October 8, the war could have been done with. October 8, Israel could have done to what America did to Japan, to what Britain did to Berlin, Dresden. That could have happened. October 8th was the perfect time. Just to put it in perspective, let's say if this would have happened in a border city of America, put it into perspective, into context. I live in San Diego, California. Tijuana is on the other side of the border. Let's just for a moment imagine if Tijuana would have breached the US border and gone into San Ysidro, murdered, mutilated, burnt, beheaded, decapitated, raped, which would be equal to 40,000 Americans. 40,000 Americans. That's equivalent of 1,200 in a 9 million population. And taking another 10,000 hostage back to Mexico. Would America have not done what it knows how to do best? Tijuana would have been a parking lot or a demolition site. Why is it taking Israel so long to finish this war? Why? Do you know why, Pierce and Mr. Smith? It's because Israel has the most highest moral ethics of any country in warfare. Israel, yes, could have done genocide on October 8th, just wiped everyone out and be done. Sadly, the hostages would have been gone with them as well. But it would have been over. The war would have been over. Gaza is free. But Israel does not do that. Because our moral standards, our rules of engagement in warfare is excruciatingly different than any other warfare. I ask you, find me any other nation during times of war provides millions of pounds of food, 3,000 calories a day per person. Who provides electric? Who provides gas? Who provides water during time of war to your own enemy? And everyone is blaming Israel. What about the children? It's like our problem. You started the war and you're using the children as human shields. What are we supposed to do? The reason why there's so much destruction in Gaza, Mr. Smith, you're complaining about how much destruction. Yes, you know why there's so much destruction? Because they booby-trapped almost every building. They wanted to create as much carnage, damage for the optics of the world to turn Israel into this horrible nation as they have been purporting with all their propaganda. Well, in reality, listen to the generals at West Point. When they looked at the ratio of civilians killed during this war compared to the combatants, it is the lowest in any warfare ever. What other country sends out pamphlets ahead of time notifying the enemy, we're coming, and this is where we're coming? What other country sends text messages letting them know we're coming, evacuate? There's no other country in the world that has shown such high moral standards as Israel. And yet Israel is still being criticized for every step of the way. And this is the issue. The world seems to be silent. You know, last week, Hamas executed 35 Palestinians in broad daylight on video. We see it. No protests. The United Nations, no condemnation. There's no protests in the streets. Child killers, murders, genocide. Yet, when Israel was protecting its borders and some Palestinians breached the border, and after many warnings, they continued on in a threatening way, Israel took them out. The world says, look, Israel is killing civilians. Why is there this double standard? It's because of anti-Semitism. It's deeply rooted. We know anti-Semitism has been around forever. And we know that until October 7, it was covertly in the closets. And October 7, it became popular. to take your anti-Semitism, your baseless hatred of the Jewish people, out in the open, out in the protests, out in the workplace. Just like Germany, days of Hitler. Nothing different. The 1930s was kind of reliving itself during this past 2 years. Is this the type of America that we are looking to live in? Is this the type of world we're looking to live in? We learned on October 7 that in life there's good and evil. There's darkness and light. There's life and there's death. There's no gray zone, gray area. This is it. What you saw on October 7 was pure evil, pure darkness, pure death. What you have seen in the last 77 years with Israel, light, a light unto the nations. You have seen life and you have seen peace, because that is what Israel seeks for. We are obsessed with life and the living. Israel is at the cutting edge in the medical world, coming up with brilliant breakthroughs no one else in the world has been able to do. And it's not for Israel, it's for the world. Israel lives with the motto, ask not what the world can do for Israel, but what Israel can do for the world. After the Holocaust, the Jewish people had every right to play the victim. After losing 6 million in the most horrendous, hideous ways, the murders, the torture, the mutilation, the concentration camps, the gas chambers, little kids being gassed, ripped away from their parents, the atrocities of the Holocaust, the nightmares still continue. We could have played the victim card, but that's not what we did. When we arrived in 1948 in Israel, we came back home. We came back home standing tall and saying, we're not going to allow our past history to paralyze us, but we're going to embrace a new future. And Israel worked, blood, sweat, and tears, in taking this desolate, deserted land of Israel and turned it into a first world. Every Arab country since 1948 had the same potential. Palestinians had 5 opportunities for statehood, but they would rather live in a death cult. They would rather live to destroy and to kill than to live and let live. So hopefully the world will learn from this and be grateful for Israel's moral ethics in prosecuting this war. Whether the peace treaty will hold, who knows? Will the ceasefire hold? Who knows? But one thing we know for sure, Hamas wants to do October 7 again, as they have said. And we take them very seriously, and we're not going to let that happen. God bless you. God loves you.